Hi and welcome to Matchmove for Production by VFX Tutors. I'm Josh and in this video we'll be moving on to shot MM17. What we'll do first is we'll just play through the shot so we can see what we're going to track, then we'll open 3DEqualizer. So we've opened 3DEqualizer and you should have a UI like this. If you don't, go down to Environments at the bottom left and select Basic, and this will reset your UI workspace. So the first thing that we want to do is import our image sequence. So if you've purchased the data package from my Gumroad store, that's great because you can follow through this tutorial step by step. If you haven't and you're using your own stuff, that's fine. All the information will still be there. So first thing we'll do is import our image sequence. So if we select our camera at the top left, then it will open up our camera tab here. And if we go to live action footage, select browse, and we'll navigate to where our files are. So we're currently doing MM17 Tesseract. We'll go to the plates and we'll select the plates. And if you don't see it like this, make sure your sequence view is selected so you see the entire sequence. Click OK. So you can see this is quite dark. It's because these plates have been transcoded to a linear color space already. So what we can do is an 8-bit color conversion. So if you go over to the right here where it says 8-bit color conversion, and if we go to gamma, we can change this to 2.2. So now it'll sort of bring it back up to sort of a better viewing color space. So now if we try and scrub through our timeline, we can't really do anything because we need to cache out our image sequence. So first of all, we'll save. So if we go to 3D4 at the bottom left, click Save Project As, and what we'll do, I'll just make a new directory under my file. And I'll call it the shot name because I'll always know that this file corresponds to this shot. Cool. Okay, so now we'll go to playback and select export buffer compression file. And this might take a while, so I'll just fast forward through this. Cool, so that's exported, so now we'll select import. And now we can press spacebar and it'll play through the shot. And as you see, as we're playing through the shot, we've got a locked off camera, but we've also got a moving object. So in this shot, we're going to need to solve our locked off camera and solve for the animation of this cube. So now we've imported our image sequence and cached it out, we'll go to our lens at the bottom right and we'll set up our lens settings. So we've got our film back width and film back height and our focal length here. So if you go to your data package, you should have your camera data. And so we see what camera we've got. We've got Blackmagic 4K, we've got our sensor size, what lens and what focal length. So what I always do, I only ever change the film back height and let the width be a passive adjustment because you don't know what's really happened to the plate. It may have been, the aspect ratio may have changed. So what I'll do, I'll put that in. I need to make sure that you put millimeter, otherwise it will automatically converts to centimeter. So if you put just 11.88, it will think that's 11 centimeters. So 11.88 millimeter. And we'll change our focal length to 35. And because we know this is a 35mm lens, we can go over to our camera, bring in our lens grid to solve for our distortion. So if you go to the top left, where it says Tesseract camera, right click and add new, and bring in a reference camera. You should have a reference to camera under your sequence camera now. So if you double click on that, make sure it's highlighted in yellow, then go over to browse. Then you want to go to your data package, select the lens grids, and then select 18 to 35, 35mm, and click OK. So now this is imported in our lens grid for that, what focal length that was shot at. So if we also change our gamma to 2.2 on this in our 8-bit color conversion, because this has already also been transcoded into linear color space. So to solve this, we need to go to F3, and it should bring up this distortion grid. So if we select this top left one point, click and drag, you should see a little zebra line, and let it snap to that corner. Then do the one below and let it snap to there, and do the top right and let that snap to that corner. So you should have something like this. So now if we go to snap here at the bottom middle, the rest will snap into place. So now we need to fill out this entire lens grid. So if we hold Control and press up, we'll start extending the top part of this column, and hold Control down, we'll start extending downwards. And same for the left and right, Control left, and Control right. And if you've gone over, it doesn't matter because it automatically disables them. But if you want to delete those, hold Shift and press right, and it will get rid of them. So now that's done, our next step would be to go to Calc at the top, Calc Distortion Camera Geometry, and calculate lens parameters. And this will calculate our distortion for those values on the lens grid. So if we set parameters and close, then we can use this Undistort tab to view our distortion. And that's pretty much done. So if we go back to our cameras up here in our object browser, double click on our sequence camera, and we can click on that button again where it says Undistort, and we can see it's translated the distortion over. So if we go back to F2, we need to solve our camera, and we also need to solve the animation of this cue. Because this camera is going to be a lock off, it's going to be quite simple, but this one might be a little bit trickier because we've got to add another point group. So what we'll do, if we go to if we import our set geo first, if we go to point groups, open that up and go to 3D models, and right click add new, and import OBJ file. And if you go to a data package, you'll have a set geo folder, and you'll have Tesseract set geo VO2. If you select OK, it should bring in your Tesseract. So now if you press F5, you won't see much because it's the camera's at the origin. So if we center the models, our camera's been pushed out so we can center onto our OBJ. So if you hold Shift and right click, you can zoom in onto it. And hold Shift and middle mouse click to translate it. Hold Shift and right click to zoom in. You see the layout has been set up so it comes in quite close. So this is quite an easy one to line up. But we can get it a little bit better. So if we select Extract Vertex, hold Control and left click, then press Alt left click to deselect it, and select Extract Vertex again, and Control left click. And we'll do this for all these corners so we can get this line up a little bit better. So Alt left click to deselect, and Extract Vertex, hold Control and left click to make a line up point. And we'll just do this for all these corners. So Extract Vertex, hold Control and left click, Alt left click to deselect, Extract Vertex, Alt left click, Control left click, sorry. And we'll do that last. We'll do this one again. Extract Vertex, Control left click. So now we can start adjusting them. And you can just click and drag them into place and get them quite close up to the edge. So we've got it pretty close already. That's a pretty good lineup. That looks pretty tight. So if we store our pose now, it'll make a stored keyframe here. But because these are lineup points, these won't solve for our camera position. Even though it's a lock off, we still need to make some tracking points, but we don't need to track it. So if we go to F2, and if you hold Control left click, just make a new tracking marker, but don't track it. You don't need to track it at all, just leave as it is. So it will do that, it will stay in the same place. Deselect it with Alt left click and Control left click and make another one. and you just want to keep making points around the cube. So control left click, and control left click. Just move that one there. Control left click. They don't have to be any specific place, they just have to be able to be projected onto the cube. So now if we press F5, if we select all our points in our point browser, if we go to edit, project points on 3D models, you'll see it's 5 of 7 points. We click OK. If we zoom in a little bit, then project points again, that should fix it. Sometimes it goes a little bit funny with the clipping plane. So now if we press Alt-C, it's now solved our position for our camera. And that should stay in place. And we now have solved our locked off camera. So now we can delete our lineup points. And what we'll do, we'll just select all these, right click, add new, point set. I'll just call this SF for single frame. And we can put them as well, just to tidy it away. So now we've done the camera for this shot. And now all we have to do is do the animation for the cube. So what we can do, if we go to our 3D models, select it, and it should automatically open a 3D model tab, but we can turn off show 3D model. We can close this group down, but if we right click, add new, point group, you see how it's made another point group underneath, but this time this one's called object and not camera. So now this is our point group that's going to solve for our animation. So if we double click on that point group, we want to bring in our 3D model again, right click, import OBJ folder, OBJ file, select the Tesseract again, and click OK. And it's important that you don't solve for anything at the moment because you'll lose this position and you'll have to do the lineup again. So what we'll do a single frame again. So if we go to F2 and just control left click, just make loads of single frame points, control left click. You don't need to track them, we just need them to lock in place. So now if we go to F5, select all the points, edit, project points on 3D models. Okay, you can zoom in if it's not projected all of them. And we can store the pose, and you can just leave it as that, because you can sometimes lose this position if you've done it, if you solve or move it around. So we know now if we do mess it up, we can just go open these frames and resolve and it'll bring it back. So if we do the same again, if we select all these points, add new, point set, called SF, a single frame, OK. And we can put all of them under that group. But now we want to view and hide them, and right click, modify, calculation and disabled, because we don't want them to solve, we just want those for backup. So now we can store our pose. So now if we go to F2, we can start tracking some of these points. So I'm going to start for the first frame, and I'm going to pick, the reason why I'm starting from the first frame, because on the last one, they change shape from the rotation. So I want to pick a tracking point where it's at its most natural shape. So control left click, and I'm just going to leave my tracking boxes like this because that's about right. Gauge, marker, and track. You can see it's not on don't center because it's not centering around it. So if I click center, if I click center 2D, it's now centered around it. And I'll do all these points from first frame. So control left click, gauge, marker, and track. Alt left click to deselect, and control left click to make a new point. Gauge, marker, and track. And let's get this one here. Rotate that. Gauge, marker, and track. Cool. So we can see this crosshair in the middle, we can hide that if it gets in the way. We go View, Show FOV, and it'll get rid of it. So now we're at the last frame, we can actually start tracking the other side. So Control left click to make a tracking marker, Gauge marker and track. And we'll do exactly the same thing but from the last frame. So Gauge marker, track. Gauge marker, also Control left click, Gauge marker and track. So let's track this one as well. This one comes off though, so we need to make sure that we turn it off when it comes out of frame. We might need to adjust it because the finger gets in the way. That should be right. So we end that point. And we've got some extra points in here, but we've got enough points for a solve to sort of solve, so we may as well try that before we go and start tracking some of these. So if we go press F5 and we go back to our stored pose, now if we select all our points, edit, project points on 3D models, we'll have 7 of 8 projected because that 8th one is behind the finger, it's not in the timeline yet. So all of these are now projected. So now if I press Alt-C, this is now going to solve the animation for the cube. So if I click Use Result, you can see something's going. It's the deviation browser is shooting up, but we'll play through and we'll have a look what's going wrong. So you can see it's sort of tracking okay, but it completely slips off here. So we want to try and figure out what's going on. So it's because this is a perfect cube, and this sort of light cube is probably not perfectly cube. So if we go to our deviation browser, show point deviation curves, active points, and we'll have a look at the points. This will show us which points are going to give us the biggest problems, and it looks like this one here is giving us quite a lot of problem. So we'll select this point, we'll right click, modify, survey free. Now press Alt-C. Obviously it's brought it down. It's still a little bit funky, so we'll select this other one that's causing us problems. Right click, survey free, Alt-C. We're still getting some problems, so if we look through, it's kind of come off our position. So what we can do, we can go to our last frame. If we select Extract Vertex and adjust this back out, and if we reline up on this frame, just using our lineup points, let's reproject. So if you press Edit, Project Points, Edit, Project Points, we'll do the same for these ones. Edit, Project Points. I'll press Alt-C to solve again. And you can see that our animation is looking better, but we still have these quite high curves in our deviation browser. So what seems to be happening, we're projecting onto a model which is probably not 100% accurate. So what we can do, we can select one of these points, right click on our point browser, modify, survey, and change it to approximately surveyed. So if we press Alt-C, and see how it's brought that down. So what we can do, we can select the other one, right click, survey, approximately surveyed, press Alt-C again, and see how it's bringing it down quite a lot. We'll do the same for this one, right click, survey, and approximately surveyed. Use result. You can see got a pretty flat curve there and it's quite low. So looking at this looks pretty good. This looks done. So if we save it, go to 3D4, save project as, and we'll just save it here where we saved it previously. I'll just overwrite. So now our next step would be to export our camera. So if we go 3D4, export project, Maya, and start frame 1001. And because it's quite a small scene, we'll export all our 3D models as well. And we'll call this OK, and we'll export that out. So now we need to export out our lens distortion. So if we go 3D4, File, Export, Export Nuke LD 3D4 Lens Distortion node. If you select file name, we'll call it the same. Nuke LD node V01. Select OK. So now our final step would be to export out our undistorted plate. So now if we go to 3D4 and run warp 4, this should now open up this window. So we can change from our footage. It's quite dark, so we might not be able to see it. So if we go to save destination footage, save footage, if we select browse, we can go to our folder. And we want to make a new directory so we don't fill up our folder with images. We'll call it UDP. Select OK. And we'll call it the same. Add UDP on the end and add dot 4 hashes dot exr, and the 4 hashes signify that we're going to be rendering an image sequence. Select OK. Then what I'll do, I'll also scale this down to 50%, so we'll have a low resolution image for it when we use it in Maya, so it's not taking up so much memory. So now we need to do is click render. They should start getting green keyframes here, and I'll probably fast forward through this because this may take a while. Cool, so that's done now. So if we go to File, Exit, we're now done with 3D. So our next step would be to go into Maya and set up our cameras and our animation for our Tesseract. So if you guys enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.